The 7 theoretical propositions continued. The 4th proposition concerns the importance of communication competence for facilitating newcomer and dominant culture transformation, which begins an identity transformation. A newcomer's intercultural transformation is often supported by their engagement with dominant and minority communication activities, which is the 5th proposition. The 6th proposition references the pressures that newcomers face from the dominant culture. Specifically, the dominant culture can pressure newcomers to change or assimilate, particularly if they are seen as threats. The extent to which newcomers choose to change can reduce these threats to some degree. Finally, cultural fusion suggests that a predisposition to acculturate or change leads to greater change, the 7th theoretical proposition. The interactivity of dominant culture and newcomers is at the heart of the nature of cultural fusion, and it is what shapes the outcomes for newcomers and the dominant community. Theoretical propositions example. Teresa is a Mexican woman who moved to San Antonio to study for her PhD and then decided to stay. She adapted to norms about how to study in the United States. She also started to adapt to other cultural norms as well, such as celebrating U.S. holidays, like the 4th of July, and participating in American college traditions, like tailgating. However, she and her husband chose to raise their children with Mexican values. They celebrate many Mexican holidays, continue to cook Mexican food, and persist in their love of soccer. These examples show how an individual can adapt some parts of identity to the new culture and choose to keep others intact, examples of the 1st and 2nd propositions. The 3rd proposition is evident when Teresa manifests her intercultural transformation in increased functional fitness. When she and her family first came to America, they were often frustrated with the transition and homesick. Teresa was fluent in English and familiar with her PhD material, but she was unsure of how to interact with her peers and participate in class. As she learned the balance between critique and support, she became much more comfortable and confident in her identity as a Mexican woman and as a PhD student in the United States. Teresa demonstrates the 4th proposition when she and her PhD program engage in communication competence. Her intercultural transformation was further supported by her participation in dominant and minority communication activities, the 5th proposition. She kept in contact with friends who had studied in the U.S., and they helped to prepare her for the culture shock she may experience before moving to San Antonio. She and her family also watched a lot of American sitcoms. This helped them learn some communication norms in the United States. Teresa's PhD program was very welcoming to her and her family, and they made many friends. However, outside the university, they would occasionally meet members of the community that were apprehensive or resentful towards them, the 6th proposition. Members of the dominant culture would occasionally tell them to stop speaking Spanish in public or to go back to their home country. Teresa and her family's decision to conform or not conform to the threats would determine part of their acceptance into the community. Finally, the 7th proposition suggests that individuals predisposed to acculturation leads to greater change. Teresa and her family's willingness to explore American culture while maintaining aspects of their own culture led to an easier transition and acceptance from the majority of the community. Here are some discussion questions that can facilitate some conversations below. First, what are some examples of cultural fusion you have observed in America? Second, what are some pros and cons that cultural fusion can have on a culture or an individual? And third, if, like Teresa, you moved to a different country, how well do you think you would acculturate according to these 7 theoretical propositions?